This is Elma, and welcome to my book journey. And today I wanted to talk to you about all the read aloud books that I read with my daughter in 2023. And so these I counted and as part of my reading for the year. And so we had a lot of good books that we read together. Some of them have a theme, as you'll notice as we go through these, depending on what kind of uh, unit homeschool units that we did. I tried to do a book that went along with whatever history or science or topic that we happen to be studying. And I'll talk about that as I go through it. And so I just have a few books here, and I just wanted to share these with you. And even though they're all pretty much middle grade books, there's still quite a few good ones in here that you might even be interested in reading. Okay, so the first book, I don't have it with me. It was a book that we checked out at the library, and that is called, sorry, I'm going to be looking down because I have my notes down here, was Out of My Mind by Sharon Draper. And this was the story of a young girl that was born with cerebral palsy. And this story um, talks about how she dealt with her disease because she was confined to a wheelchair because she was not able to move and she wasn't able to speak as well. But it's almost like she was trapped in her own body, and she was in middle school, and how she dealt with other kids her age and just being in school in general. She's a very intelligent girl, loved to read and loved to learn, and her story is so sweet because she wants to be part of what the other kids are doing, but her physical um, limitations prohibit that, but also just the fact that she's not able to speak. And she has all these things going on in her mind that she would love to share with people. She does, toward the middle, I think, of the book, she gets a machine where she's able to type in and then the machine speaks for her. And so that is a wonderful story. My daughter gave that 5 stars. And I'll also tell you what her rating is and then my rating. We kind of differ on a lot of different books. But this first book, she really enjoyed it, and she gave it 5 stars. The next book we read was a book called Rooftoppers by Catherine Rendell. And this was a story regarding a young girl that when she was just a baby, she was involved in a shipwreck, and a man found her as a little baby. She was in a cello case, in the water, and he rescued her, and he ended up kind of like adopting her. And as she's growing up, she always had that idea from the clues that they found where they found her that she was a that her mother was a famous cello player, and she wanted to track down the clues. And so when she was older, her and her adoptive father went to Paris to try to track her mother down. And while she was there, she met a group of orphan children, really, that lived on the streets. But instead of living on the lower levels of the streets, they lived on the rooftops because that way they wouldn't be caught by the police or whatever and be taken into orphanages. They wanted to live on their own, so to speak. And so they lived on the rooftops, and they would jump from roof to roof and live. The things that they ate were crazy, horrible. My daughter was like, she really didn't like, she really did not like this book because of the circumstances and everything. I think she rated this a 2. She gave this 2 stars. We did finish it, and it did have like a happy ending at the end, but it was really interesting with the group of kids that she met. I liked the book. I probably would have given it a 3 myself for the story and everything. So that's that book. And then the next book we read was this book. It's called Dear America, Diary of Margaret M. Brodie, Voyage on the Great Titanic. And so this is part of the Dear America series. There's so many books that they have, and each book is different, where they have a different character, whether a boy or a girl, and it's their diary. And it's always surrounding or around a different time period. There's books where they're in the Great Depression, the Civil War, just you name it, you can find it. And there's so many of them. And I've managed to pick quite a few of them up. We read one the year before about a girl that was on the Mayflower. We really enjoyed that one. So this one is her story. She uh, is writing in her diary about being on this big grand ship, and then her experience on the ship. And it's we all know how that that story ended. Now my daughter loves anything Titanic, so we were reading this book when we were doing a Titanic unit. So we read this one and a couple others, and she really liked this. She gave this one 5 stars. And then the next book, and I'll put it up here because I don't have it, is Iceberg by Jennifer Nielsen. And this one, again, about the Titanic. And this is about a young girl that is a stowaway on the Titanic. And then her experiences meeting people. She wanted to be a journalist, so she wanted to write everything that she could about this great grand ship and the people that she met, and she wrote it all in her diary. And then there was like kind of a little subplot of a little not a mystery, but something suspicious that was going on that she was had to figure out. So that was really interesting. That book, we really enjoyed that one. That was another 5 star read for my daughter. And then the next book we read was Adam of the Road by Elizabeth Janet Gray. And this is an older book. This was part of our when we started to study the Middle Ages. And so this book is a Newbery Award book from way back. I wonder when this was written. Let me double check. This was written, oh, let's see, where's the date for the pub? 1942, is that right? This is an old book. It was part of her homeschool curriculum. I mean, it's just a sweet book, but it centers around a young boy by the name of Adam, and he's 11 years old, and he and his father are what they call minstrels. And so they would go through each town and they would sing songs and tell stories, and that was how they earn their living back then. And the story is of him traveling during the year, and he gets separated from his father, and he also gets separated from his little dog. And there's a whole big adventure, so to speak, of how he tries to find his dad and his dog. I really enjoyed this book. My daughter didn't connect with this character or the time period. I don't think she liked the time period very much. So she gave this one on 2 stars. I gave this, I think, 4 stars when I read it, because I just really enjoyed um, the writing and the story. The next book that we read was another medieval kind of book, and it was Kingdom's Dawn by Charles Black. And this was a Christian fiction um, middle grade book as well. And it involved, let's see, I wrote their names down, Leonid and Tess. And basically it's the story of like good and evil. And these two were the good, and they were going to go up against the evil knight that was wreaking havoc on this kingdom. And so this was part of a series, and this was just the first. We only read the first book. My daughter didn't want to continue on with the story. It was okay. I think I think I rated it maybe a 3. I didn't find it very enjoyable, but it was a pretty short book, so we just we finished it to read it and to mark it off that we read it. I think she gave that. She didn't. I don't know what she gave that. I've got 3 stars. Maybe she liked it more than I remembered. Okay, so then the next one we read, and I really enjoyed this book. This one's called We Dream of Space, and it's by Erin Kelly. This was such a good book. This book is during the time period of the space shuttle Challenger, and if you remember, that was a big tragedy in our country. And this book revolves around 3 siblings: Cash, Fitch, and Bird. And Bird was the sister, and she loved all things space. In her school, they were studying about the Challenger, all the things, and she would write in her notebook about her wanting to be an astronaut someday, and a woman astronaut. And she just had that that desire and dreams and things. And but there's also some drama that's going on in the family and within this with the siblings. And it's there's parts in there that are really they, at least me, I'm easy to cry. in these books. So there was some, especially when the accident happened. If any of you remember, I was in high school at the time, and I remember sitting in homeroom when that accident happened because we were all watching because there was a teacher, Krista McCullough, that was on board, and so when the disaster happened, when the ship exploded, all the children in the United States pretty much were watching, and it was so this book talks about that and how they dealt with it, and it's a really good book. I gave this 5 stars. My daughter really liked it too. I think she gave it 4 stars. She enjoyed it. So this was part of we were doing our space unit at the time, so this was why we picked this book. And then the next book during our space unit was I Love You, Michael Collins. And this one was, now we're going to go back in time. And this is around the time when Neil Armstrong first stepped on the moon. And so we have these 2 characters, that young kids that were following that, and so excited. I mean, that was such a wonderful time of them. um, it's just an amazing time that somebody's actually going to land on the moon. And this was back in 1969. And one of the cute things is they talk about the Tang. I don't know if you can see how they were drinking Tang. And I remember Tang as a kid. That's the drink of the astronauts. And in fact, I'll put a picture up here because my daughter had never tried it, and we went and tried to hunt it down in the grocery store, and I don't think she liked it very much, but that was something to do. And then so this story is about the little girl, the young girl. What is her name? She writes stories to uh, Michael Collins, and he is actually the third. We always hear about Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong because they were the ones that walked on the moon. But Michael Collins was the one that was the third astronaut that orbited the moon while the 2 were there. And so she picked him as her favorite and would write letters to him. And her name was Mamie, and she was going through a hard time with her family, and her parents were having marital problems and things. So there was not only the story of the astronauts and things, but of the young girl and her friend. Really good. I think I gave this 5 stars. My daughter gave it 4 stars. She really enjoyed this one as well. Okay, so we're moving on to a different study. We started American history, and then so this was our first book because we were looking at before the United States became the United States, and when the Europeans were coming over and settling the land and discovering things. And so this book talks about, this is called The Walk the World's Rim by Betty Baker. And this is a story of Chaco and this Esteban was the slave that was also there with them. So these 2 basically were trackers for the Spanish men, soldiers, or what did they call them? But they were the Spanish that came over. There was a group of 3 or 4 men that were traveling from what was Florida. It wasn't Florida yet, but it was Florida because this was during the 16th century. And so they were traveling and they wanted to get to Mexico, and these 2 were like their trackers, their guides, and their story was really good because the little boy left his village. And the interesting part for me as we read the book was as they traveled from Florida to Mexico, all the different tribes that they met, and they were so different because of just their circumstances. Some were lived off the land and grew plants and vegetables, and then there were some tribes that were hunters because they had more animals and things like to hunt. And so it was neat to see the different tribes that they met. And then they ended up in Mexico, and then his experience in a big city was mind-blowing for this young man. So this was a really good book. My daughter gave this 3 stars. The next book was the second book to our first book. The first book we read was Out of My Mind, and then we ended up going and reading the second book in this set, and this one's called Out of My Heart. So it's the same young girl, and I forgot to mention her name. her name was Melody, the girl with cerebral palsy. And so she is older now. And then, so, and this book was surrounded all around her summertime, where she found a camp, a summer camp that was strictly for children with different disabilities. And she really wanted to go. And her mother looked into it, and it was a really wonderful camp. And she had a great time, and she made new friends, and she fit in really for the first time because of the other children that also had different, some children were blind, or they just couldn't walk very well, and other kids had wheelchairs and things like that. And she just made some really great friends, and it was a really good book. We really enjoyed it. And like I said, the whole book was her at this camp and the fun things she got to do. And so this book I think we gave this one 5 stars too. So we really like this duology that Sharon Draper wrote. I would highly recommend both of these books to read. The next book we read, going back to our American history book, this is called The Witch of Blackbird Pond by Elizabeth George Spear, another older book. That this was about a girl named Kit who grew up in Barbados with her grandfather, and lived like on the beach. Really nice, very free living. And her grandfather ends up dying, and so she goes to live with her um, cousins, or her aunt, I believe, in Connecticut, in the colonies. And they're very different from her free living that she lived with her grandfather in Barbados, and they're Puritans. So it's all about her really getting a new perspective on life and how people live, and the things that she sees there. And it was a really good book. She meets a woman that is ostracized in this small town, and she befriends her, and then what happens when she ends up doing that. This was really good. I gave this, my daughter gave this book 4 stars as well. We really enjoyed her story. Then the next book, we weren't on any Titanic unit study or anything, but we just wanted to read another Titanic book. And this is Titanic Book One, Unsinkable by Gordon Corman. It's a really short little book that we read and together. And this is part of this is actually part of a series that we did not, sorry, that we did not complete. We started it, and I wanted to get back to it, but we had other books to read. But this is about, I think there's like 4 or 5 different kids that are on the Titanic, and like their backgrounds and how they all get there, and then they meet, and then there's like a background mystery kind of story going on, and it's really good. I really enjoyed it. So there's I don't own these. I had to go back to the library. And when I was there, I was like, well, might as well pick up the other one. So I'll just show you. The second book is called Collision Course. And then I picked up book 3, SOS. And they're all pretty thin books. So I kind of want to finish the story because I want to know what happened to these kids, because it really left off at like a little cliffhanger, of course, for the next book. So I want to find out what happened. So our that might have been our last book for that revolved around the Titanic anyway. So Ellie gave that 3 stars. Okay, and then we read, for Christmas time, we read the book called The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, I think it's called, by Barbara Johnson, I think. But I'll put it up here because I don't have that one. And that one was hilarious. We love that one. It was so funny because it was about these kids, family of kids called the Herdsmen, and they were like delinquents. And Ellie was just saying, these kids are horrible. And they were delinquent kids. they they were bullies, and the kids in the school just like, oh, they were afraid of them, or because they would do crazy things, terrible things. And they basically lived, on their own. Their parents weren't there to watch them, or they were working all day or whatever. But the story revolves around a Christmas pageant that the church was having that they got involved in, and they kind of took over all the parts. And that was a whole thing. It's a really short, cute book, and we really enjoyed it. And then afterwards, we found the movie on YouTube and watched it. And the woman that was on there was um, the lady from MASH. Is it Loretta Swift? Swift. She played the woman that was doing the doing the play. Having to organize all the kids, and these herdsmen kids, they kind of were going crazy. So that was our last. Oh no, that was not our last book. So then our last book of 2023 was continuing on in our unit of the history, and we read The Sign of the Beaver, and it's by the same author that wrote The Witch of Blackburn Pond, Elizabeth Spear. And this one was really good. It was about a young boy named Matt, and him and his father came from, I think, Massachusetts, and then they traveled to Maine during this time period, and they set up a cabin and everything. And the dad said, "Well, now I'm going to go back home and pick up your mom and your daughter. I mean, your mom and your sister, and bring them back. And you're going to be alone here in the cabin by yourself. But we'll be back maybe like in 3 months." And of course, the father leaves, and he's there to take care of the cabin and everything. And he ends up meeting a young Native American named Ateen, and his grandfather. They come, and the grandfather wants Matt to teach his grandson English because he knows that there's going to be more white men coming into his country and he in his land, and he wants his grandson to speak English so that he knows when they come with the treaties, what they're really saying. So he befriends that. They have a friendship, and they learn from each other, and he's there by himself all this time waiting for his parents to come home. And my daughter was like, "They're not coming home, they're dead." She's like, they're not. Yeah, she always thinks the worst in these books. But anyway, we really enjoyed the book. And I can't remember what she gave it. I think she gave it either a 3 or a 4. And I really liked it. I really liked the story of the two boys and their friendship, and how they learned from one another. He taught them how to fish, and taught them how to shoot the arrow, and just be aware of his surroundings and things. It was really a really good book. Recommend that one. And it's short. It's a really short one. And we did have one that we did not finish. I mean, there's our bookmark. We got halfway. And I had heard so many good things about this book. It's called Pax by Sarah Pennypacker. Neither one of us connected with it. It's about a young boy that was raising a fox, and then he had to release it because he had to go live with his grandfather because his dad was going off to war, I believe. And so he was, obviously upset because he didn't want to give up his little fox. And they just, took him in the wilderness woods area and just left him there. And so the book's about him trying to find him. And we got like halfway, and we both were like, well, I don't know, we may pick it up later on this year. I think we got it cut we were reading it during the fall time because it had like fall vibes. And but my daughter she didn't care about PAX. Yeah, that sounds kind of bad. But maybe I don't know if you've read it. Should we continue this book? I mean, like I said, I heard that it was really good. And maybe for younger kids, maybe they like it. She didn't connect with that at all. So that was one that we didn't finish. And I just wanted to tell you about the one that we're doing now, which we started this a couple weeks ago. And this book is called Light Comes to Shadow Mountain by Tony Buzeo, and I love this book. And we are reading this book because my daughter and I we're really blessed right now to be a part of Ticket. I want to make sure Laura with Ticket to Learning. And I'll post her link down below. She is a homeschool mom that she's done homeschooling for many years, and like a lot of homeschool moms, pick going and looking at different curriculums that work for her children. Well, she decided that she wanted to write her own curriculum. And so she's going to be releasing that later this year. And I was, like I said, I was blessed to be a part of her beta team that is testing her curriculum for her. And so Ellie and I are going through it together. And she has so many wonderful resources. So the whole uh, curriculum is based around this book. This first curriculum that she's putting out is all around the book. So the book is about a young girl growing up in the Appalachia mountain area, and right after or during the Depression era, and her town does not have electricity, and now it's coming to her little town, hopefully, if they could get enough people to buy into it. And so what Laura does with our curriculum is she's taking different themes and things to study. I mean, there's so much in this book too that you can go on rabbit trails and study. We've been talking about, of course, electricity, like the science portion, and then as far as history, the Great Depression, how the Great Depression happened with, the Roaring Twenties, all that. And then so, like I said, we just started this recently, so we're maybe 2 weeks in, and so far, like I said, we're kind of almost halfway, and really love the book. And like, um, I'm just looking forward to seeing what happens with her. It's really great story, great pick that Laura did. So I'll probably um, do another video after we get further along into the study, because I want to share that with y'all and how it worked out for us. You might be interested if you're a homeschool mom out there, or of a homeschool mom, that likes doing unit studies, curriculum. This is what we've done so far is really great. So that's what we're reading right now. We really enjoy it. Okay, so that is all of the read alouds that my daughter and I did for 2023, and I'm looking forward to this year. We're already on a good start with this book here that I just talked about. So that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out. Let me know below if you've read any of these books, if you've read them, when you were a child, or especially the older ones, the older books, or if there's any that you think, hey, that might be a good thing, especially for, keep these in mind maybe for middle grade March, when that comes around. These are some books that you might want to pick up. And again, thank you so much for watching, and hope you come back soon. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.